Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Carrico, Director of Veteran Programs for the Missouri Humanities, and I would like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's reading of Proud to Be Writing by American Warriors, Volume 10. Missouri Humanities is a member-supported organization, and our mission is to connect Missourians to the people, places, and ideas that shape society. Since 2011, we have partnered with organizations across the state to provide veterans, military personnel, and their families with an outlet for self-expression through writing. Our veteran programs include writing workshops, public readings, a new Proud to Be podcast, and this annual publication. Together, these programs encourage hundreds of veterans each year to tell their stories. In this year's foreword, Bill Gloss, an American journalist, poet, former paratrooper, and combat veteran, had this to say: "What I have discovered in writing about war is that words have the power to heal, and that healing can be shared. It's like a form of group therapy, and that's what Proud to Be provides, a community in which to gather and share experiences." He goes on to say, "Being part of a veterans writing community gives me a sense of kinship I haven't felt since being a soldier." Proud to Be serves as both a memorialized representation of the unique aspects of military service in our nation's history and an opportunity for connection. It offers civilians the ability to bear witness and connect through a richer understanding of military life, and invites those who have served an opportunity to share their experiences through poetry, fiction, essays, interview, and photography. While the views expressed in this program may not necessarily reflect those of Missouri Humanities, it is our hope that events like today provide the members of the military community with a necessary platform to tell their stories in their own ways. While you're watching, we invite you to be part of the conversation. In a live reading, our presenters can see the room, they can feel the applause. So the chat box below, feel free to let the readers know when something resonates with you. Please note, at times, this presentation may contain strong language and is intended for mature audiences. When engaging via the chat feature, please be mindful of your comments, as we would like to create a thoughtful dialogue in a safe space. At the conclusion of the reading, a link to the program survey will pop up on your screen. We would love to hear your thoughts about today's program. And if you've not already purchased your copy of PTB 10 or you're curious about past volumes, I'll include a link in the chat. Your book purchases help support future veteran programs. With no further ado, I'd like to thank the many people who have made this volume possible, from the contributors to the judges and to all of you at home who are tuning in. A special thanks to Dr. James Brubaker of Southeast Missouri State University Press for this ongoing partnership. Here we are, it's year 10 of Proud to Be. It's really exciting. But he will be introducing our readers today. So James, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you to you and Missouri Humanities Council for all you do with this. Thank you to everyone who submitted and who's here reading today. It's always just a great privilege to read your work and bring this volume to life. Without further ado then, let's jump right in. Our first reader today is Ann Bowden, who served on active duty with the U.S. Marine Corps from 2006 to 2015, deploying in support of Operation Enduring Freedom as an AH-1W Cobra pilot in 2011 to 2012 and 2013. She currently serves in the Marine Corps Reserve and lives in England with her husband and 2 children. She blogs about her life at CaptainLeatherneck.com. Let's have a virtual round of applause and welcome Ann Bowden.
All right, thank you, James, and thank you everyone for being here. I am reading an excerpt from my essay, UXO. Scan the area around a squad of infantry Marines. They're bunched next to a litter with a man sprawled on it. He's urgent. The Marine needs care within 2 hours to save life, limb, or eyesight. Speed is of the essence. This medevac's personal. He's a fellow jarhead. Wisps of yellow canister smoke waft into your line of sight. Zoom out to search for bad guys. They must see the helicopters by now. Hacksaw, stand by for 9 line. Booyah. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller of the infantry unit has taken over comms. Adrenaline engulfs your body. JTACs are specifically trained to control aircraft in combat. Pilots work with them all the time back home. This is a no-shit, kitty gloves off request for close air support. Your first live 9 line out here. Giving permission for both choppers to fire lethal rockets and guns, Hellfire missiles if necessary. No more notional run-ins, battle damage assessments, fake target destruction. This is actual combat. It's game time. The 20mm cannon hangs directly underneath your seat. 2 chubby Hellfires bristle from the right-hand wing stub. 7 high-explosive 2.75-inch rockets wait patiently in their pod on the left. Your job is to obliterate the bad guys. You've trained years for this. Don't fuck it up. JTAC transmits his 9 line. Read back mandatory lines, 4, 6, and restrictions. Feel like you've downed 10 cups of coffee. Focused, excited, jittery. Today might be the day your combat cherry popped. You're looking for the Taliban fighter who ambushed the grunt patrol. There's at least one casualty, the Marine, and possibly a local national child to boot. The Taliban doesn't care about collateral damage. Smoke swirls from the middle of a dusty road below. Temporary LZ. Dash 2 flies 180 out in the overhead, so either of you can tip in and shoot baddies. You've practiced this formation hundreds of times in North Carolina. It's natural. Nothing suspicious down there, though what counts as suspicious remains unclear. No visible weapons anyway. Fixate on a dust-off bird sinking into the LZ that's ringed by Marines. They're taking a knee too close to the landing spot. Make it bigger, boys. You should be looking into the distance for trouble, beyond the hasty cordon, but you've never seen a real medevac before. Marines carry the litter toward the bird as it lands in clouds of brown dust. Glance at the time. The second Army bird loiters nearby, out of the way. A garbled transmission breaks the silence. You only make out UXO, unexploded ordnance. Did you catch that? You ask your aircraft commander. His reply is over the radio. Confirm UXO situation. Silence. Then, casualty has UXO in his leg. He's been hit by an RPG, but it didn't explode. The JTAC seems calm about this. What? An image flashes through your head. A metal, rocket-propelled grenade protrudes from the Marine's leg, green and cylindrical. Bone fragments are scattered everywhere. Blood drips everywhere. Agonizing screams echo through the dirty air. It's fucked up. No shit, he's urgent. Can Dustoff even let him on board? No hesitation. Another mushroom of brown as Dustoff thunders straight line to the closest forward operating base, Edinburgh. Look at the clock. Dustoff was on deck for less than 2 minutes. The second Blackhawk continues lazy circles, waiting for the next patient. Scan the ground for bad guys. Nothing. The Marines on deck don't move much. They're still guarding the hasty LZ, now empty LZ. There's radio chatter about the local national casualty, an Afghan child, a girl. Look past the Marines, farther up the dirt road. The sun is low in the sky. Dust seems thicker. It's hard to make out details. Some local nationals ride around on motorbikes, skirting the edge of the camera's vision. Hard to tell their intentions. The juddering helicopter doesn't help. A motorbike turns down the dirt road toward the Marines. Cursory drive-by for Taliban intelligence before dinner? Free potshot at stationary Marines? Curious, innocent commuter? Zoom the sensor in to check. The bike swerves away. It's hard to see who has weapons from 1,000 feet above. Bingo fuel, your aircraft commander transmits across the interflight frequency. Same, -2 relays. You pull away from the sensors, ring marks indenting your eye sockets like sucker punches. Heads up. The aft fuel low caution light is illuminated. Quick glance at the fuel gauge. The needle bounces between hash marks. Hard to take a reading. Swag it halfway. It's low regardless. Normally, helicopters fill up in Bastion, swing by the hot pits, top up without shutting down. You can't make it that far. That's 20 minutes away. Need to follow the Blackhawk into Fob Eddy and grab gas at the forward arming and refueling point. It's no big deal. Even you've done FARP operations before. Your section checks off station and requests hot gas at Eddie. Hacksaw, negative. We have UXO on site. The Eddie controller is trying to follow the rules. Eddie, Hacksaw low on fuel. UXO understood. Risk accepted. Request permission to land. Your signer must be rolling his eyes in the rear seat. Of course there's UXO. The medevac was an unexploded RPG buried in some poor Marine's leg. The section circled overhead while he was flown out. You saw the litter being loaded. Hacksaw negative. Refuel at Camp Bastion. Eddie is closed. Turn inbound. Can't make Bastion. You need fuel or you'll fall out of the sky. Yet another casualty. Eddie, Hacksaw critical fuel. The forward fuel low caution light flickers on. Land as soon as possible. Cross over square HESCO barriers filled with broken rocks and rubble that define the boundary of Fob Eddie. An American outpost in the middle of nowhere. Inside the wire now, committed. As the skids settle into dirt, the controller grants you permission to land. Both birds hot refuel with rotors turning. Nobody leaves either cockpit. Look out the plexiglass canopy and watch people scurrying around the Blackhawk a few hundred yards away. Wonder what's happening if the Marine's on board. Try to imagine the pain of a rocket stuck in your femur. You can't. Hope he makes it. The Cobra's air conditioning blasts ice crystals in your face, but sweat continues to roll down your back. Amped from the sortie and possibly finding the bad guy. Today might be the day you schwack an insurgent. One who tried to kill a Marine with an RPG. One who injured an innocent civilian child. One who's still out there. You're thrilled and terrified.
All right, thanks so much, Anne. Let's have another virtual round of applause. Next up, we have Nico Eden. Nico Eden went from a professional ballroom dancing career appearing in Assassin's Creed and Sabado Gigante to joining the US Air Force. She received an achievement medal for her tour in Saudi Arabia. Her photography has been exhibited with Santa Monica College, published in Bahia Magazine, the Dilly Down Review, and Aurora, and IMBD credits for the film Friend of the World for still photography. Let's welcome and give a virtual round of applause for Nico Eden.
Hello. So I'm going to read you my piece today. This is when I was in quarantine once my tour got to Saudi Arabia in the summer of 2020. It's called Alarm Red. 0400, day 4. At night, the wrestling of air howls. Many times I'm thinking of wolves, the way the air screams through the plastic. Many things are an illusion here. Once I climb to bed, it rocks and sways, the gestures of delicate turbulence without the offerings of a cocktail. This is the culmination of the bunk beds we sleep in, a dry country we've deployed into, and some weird apparatus that dispenses airflow in the tents where we sleep. Welcome home. 0430, day 9. I can feel my shoulder caving its way back through my body like a column of Russian dolls, stacking back into one. The mattress is hard. It is a wonder the troops sleep during quarantine. This is our introduction to Al-Kahaj and the weirdness the world has been indoctrinated with in 2020. Moments before my internal conflict to get up and use the head, I'm disrupted by loud blaring. I'm disorientated. What time is it? Alarm red. Alarm red. I look around the tent. Bras are out, hair is wild, and their bewilderment is the same. The tent chief calls out, "Did he say exercise? I didn't hear exercise." This is an alarm red. I repeat, this is an alarm red. The big voice announces over the box. The blaring continues in its appropriate rhythm over the base intercom. We scramble for the indecent from some article of clothing to cover. For me, my fucking socks and tennis shoes. My bunkmate and I are struggling at the simplest of functions. God, How long has it been since the first alarm? We have to start moving quickly now. We wrestle politely out of the tent. Everyone is still in confusion by not hearing the word exercise. The red dirt kicks up as we find a spot in the bunker. Some are just waking up. Some have yet to go to bed. And we wait. It is the waiting that haunts us, crammed in a sea of clay bunkers that serve no real protection. This was not an exercise. The Yemen have intercepted. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nico. Give a virtual round of applause. Next, we have Robert Morgan Fisher. Robert Morgan Fisher won the 2021 Montana Humor Prize, the 2018 Chester Himes Fiction Prize, was shortlisted for the 2019 John Steinbeck Award, as well as the 2021 Rick D. Moranis Prize, and was runner-up for the 2021 Saturday Evening Post Great American Fiction Prize. His work has appeared in numerous anthologies and literary journals. He teaches creative writing at Antioch University and at UCLA to PTSD veterans. You can find them at www.robertmorganfisher.com. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Robert.
Thank you, Dr. Brubaker. Proud to be part of Proud to Be, and Lisa Carrico for all your hard work through the years. This is an outstanding anthology. I'm honored to be a part of it and to have two of my word commandos here with us today. You'll be hearing from them in a second. All right, this is called, this excerpt from a story called You Stay Here. The sound was like God scraping a gigantic wooden match across the sky. Shane immediately looked heavenward. The townspeople around him either ignored the sound or looked up with dull expressions of mild curiosity, shielding their eyes with cupped hands. Shane noticed that in the time it took for Father to dash across the street to their station wagon, everything about him transformed. Dad still wore the same civilian clothes he favored on Saturdays, chinos, gray Naval Academy sweatshirt, worn-out sneakers, and Ray-Ban aviators. But he'd changed. He became the mysterious professional Shane had only speculated about, the naval aviator who vanished every year. For months on end, to catapult jets off an aircraft carrier into parts unknown. This was a rare sighting, a thrilling thing to see. Military professional Dad sprinting out of casual Saturday morning Dad like a molting raptor. Get in, get in, get in, Father yelled. Shane went from standing across the street to riding shotgun in one smooth motion. The station wagon peeled out in reverse before Shane had even closed the door. 3-on-the-tree transmission launched them into drive. They followed the downward trajectory of 2 descending parachutes to the outskirts of town. Shane and his father leaned outside windows like a pair of dogs. Shane scanned the horizon for a plume of smoke, telltale signs of impact. Shouldn't we follow the jet? Isn't it going to crash? Jane squeaked. Negative, it's an F-9. Shane didn't know what F-9 meant, his knowledge of naval aircraft being greater than the average citizen's, but still somewhat limited. Father closed in on the parachute, touching down on a bare farm field a half-mile distant, veering the station wagon off-road, bucking over furrows, setting up a rooster tail of dust. As they approached, triangulation of ejection, sighting, and recovery nearly complete, the parachute gently tugged a stiff body on the ground. Shane had never felt more exhilarated in all of his 7 years. Is he dead? Out of the car, running, Shane's heart thunked like a washing machine with an unbalanced load. Ripping off Ray-Bans, Father knelt over the motionless figure attached to the chute. Shane hung back, awaiting, in terrible anticipation, as if his father were about to deliver last rites. Shane prepared himself for tears as he watched Father's shoulders shudder. It took him a second to realize it was not a shudder of grief, but a chuckle of relief. Shane rushed forward, saw a mannequin in a flight suit, face painted gold. The effect was spooky and holy, like a golden idol had globbed off the sun and floated down to earth. Shane didn't quite understand. He pitched forward into the dirt clods, joined his father in a kneeling position. Air show out at the base, said Father. Someone hit eject too soon. Shane suddenly remembered the The weekend air show. They were supposed to go tomorrow. Why is it a Shane searched for the exact word mannequin? It's just for show. He was supposed to eject out in front of the crowd. Remember last year? You don't punch a real man out of a jet unless you have to, he said. Dangerous. Father shot up to full stature. On went the Ray-Bans. You stay here. He watched his father double time to the car. Shane's heart was a fist knocking on a window, trying to stop someone from leaving. Where are you going? The other chute is the seat. We got to recover it, he sternly repeated. You stay here. Shane watched him drive to where the other parachute had landed, over by the high school. Now he was in charge, determined to do a good job. This was important, an assignment. He was now dad. The mannequin's gold face glowed. Shane reached out and touched the face and recoiled at the cheap roughness of its complexion. It was like touching the crucified Christ statue at church. Voices and footsteps, people approaching. Unlike Shane's father, they parked politely along the road and trotted over to investigate. Shane solemnly guarded the mannequin. A fat man and his skinny wife arrived, huffing and sweating. Other people followed, including a kid on a mini bike and 3 high school boys. The high schoolers fondled the parachute, then thrust hands into the pockets of their jeans. He's okay, panted the fat man. The man's wife pointed. It's a dummy, dear. He's not a dummy, said Shane. It's a mannequin. The crowd clotted around Shane. My father went to get the seat, said Shane, pointing. It was a F9. Huh? Said the teenager with splotchy pimples. From the air show, someone hit eject by accident. Shane tried to sound blasé, as if this sort of drama were routine for him. He looked away with feigned annoyance. The fat man nudged the mannequin with his foot. Shane fought the urge to slap away the shoe. Your dad left you out here? He had to get the seat, Shane repeated. The what? Said the skinny wife. The seat from the jet. It parachuted, Jane pointed. Over there. Oh, said the fat man, mopping his face with a handkerchief. Need any help? Nope, said Shane. A red-tailed hawk rode invisible thermals above the bare field. Shane touched the mannequin's hand that, like the face, was also golden. He wondered if there was anything cool in the zippered pockets of the mannequin's flight suit, but didn't want to check with these people watching.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you. Can I just add that my father is watching this right now on our device perched in front of the computer, and he served in the Korean War at stateside in the Army, and then went into the Navy and had a long career as a naval flight officer, beginning in the Cuban Missile Crisis and all the way to the Joint Chiefs and many tours in Vietnam. I'm really proud to be his son and a military dependent, and it's probably the reason that I got this job working with veterans.
Thank you.
All right, another round of applause for Robert. Thank you so much. Next up, we've got Jay Harden. Jay Harden grew up in the South with a deep sense of freedom, playing barefoot in the alleys and creeks. His mother was a school teacher and his father was an agricultural county agent and state legislator. He saw the importance of duty, honor, and public service flying B-52 combat missions during the Vietnam War. He writes his way to understanding his own experience and sharing what he learned with following generations. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Jay Harden.
Thank you. I'm reading 2 poems today that are published in Proud to Be, all due to my combat service as a navigator leading a string of B-52s while my wife was home carrying our first child. Safe sleep. War murders sleep. The salt sleep of kings safe in their realms. Safety and good sleep go together like blood brothers. No matter how far away or long ago your war, Sleepless memories appear like a surgical scar until they stir you toward today. Coming home brings safe sleep, the unknown peace that wakes you satisfied. Give yourself peace. These are my thoughts of deeds, dark dressed in words. A uniform does not make actions right, nor do shiny bars command righteousness. My life was lost again and again, as it took others again and again, clouding all the while this heart. One life taken is too many. As duty becomes mechanical, prosecuting war, care flies out the cockpit, and self-worth free falls below, crashing and burning jungle. No one like me comes home again, staying lost in that sucking swamp of doubtful mind. Only I can redeem myself. And her words come back to me, soft and clear, unchanging and unerasable. You, the one I always loved, are an innocent man. Then, now, and forever. Men akin to you are the heart and soul of this country. You can give yourself the only gift that matters. Give yourself peace.
Thanks so much, Jay. Let's have another virtual round of applause for Jay. And next up, we have Benjamin Inks. Benjamin Inks served 3 years in the Army and has worked an odd array of jobs from private investigator to personal trainer. Past publications include the Little Patuxent Review, Illinois Review, Adelaide Magazine, Creepypasta, Lexington Springs Review, Zero Dark 30 Review, and Winnow Magazine. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Benjamin Inks.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story, On a Mountain in Logar. I originally envisioned this as its own standalone vignette, so I'm very pleased to be taking it out of the larger story and almost presenting it to you in its entirety. Here goes. Now, a grenade, like a bayonet, is almost an antiquated item. You can't throw a grenade very far. At best, you chuck it in a bunker, or more likely someone's living room, and hope it does the hard part for you. This was probably what my squad leader meant by saying, pray you never have to use it. If you whip out a grenade in a firefight, that is some desperate close-quarter shit you got yourself into. None of this was lost on me as I carted my grenade around from block to block, city to city, its sheer weighty hang reminding me that at any given second, something had the potential to blow up in my face. Maybe I'd have had more confidence had I received the proper training, but to this day, it's a dirty secret that I never qualified with grenades. Yes, you heard that right. I swam through the course, just like all you all, no doubt. But when it came time to the live throw, I was ejected from the pit after my first toss. See, one of the drill sergeants had placed his green big-ass hat on the middle mannequin, and all the troops wanted to stick their grenade closest to that target. When I threw mine, instead of ducking behind the protective wall, I watched open-mouthed as my grenade landed in the patch of shade made by the drill sergeant's hat. Maybe I wanted to watch that stupid hat blow up. Maybe I was stunned at such a lucky toss. Well, I must have stared a little too long because I found myself slammed against the wall by the supervising cadre, who pressed over me like he was saving my life. I didn't get to throw my other 2 grenades to qualify. I thought I was a no-go, a failure. Well, they must have needed fucking soldiers and staff, because I was pushed through to graduation without a word about it. They couldn't afford to reject or recycle anybody after 9/11. Here's the funny true part. The drill sergeant's hat was no worse for the wear. Literally, he's dusted it off and stuck it right back on his fat, bald head after I'd blown it skyward and 6 feet back. It made me think, what good are these things other than making such an awful racket? So is there such a big difference between throwing 1 grenade and 3? Well, it took Goldilocks 3 tries to find the right porridge, the right bed. I was strapped with something on my chest too hot, too hard for me to be comfortable with. My heart literally beating against it. We were seeing some real shit too. On some occasions, enemy bullets were close enough to communicate their crack or their biz or their thump or their sizzle. We were quickly becoming fluent in the many dialects of death, yet I couldn't shake the anxiety of my own grenade. I just knew the day would come when I'd get shot in the grenade, or I'd roll over on it wrong, or intense desert sunlight would superheat it and blow my head off, cartoonishly intact and pouting like the remains of a suicide bomber. Then one day on patrol, we take contact. By the time we find cover, we realize it's coming from above. So we start lighting up this rooftop alcove thingy, but we're at the wrong angle, chipping at the wall while the insurgent points his AK down and fires blind. My squad leader shouts for me to arc a grenade while everyone else suppresses fire. Now, let me just pause and tell you all, this is a bad idea. Usually you throw from the rooftop. That way you're not fighting gravity. But whatever, pinned down, being shot at, being yelled at, I take my stupid grenade, pull pin, and hurl it. It doesn't make it. It clips the lip of the rooftop, bounces back, and lands right between my feet. I freeze, dumbfounded. I knew this fucking grenade would kill me. I almost feel like laughing. That's when I get tackled from behind. Basic training all over again. Only this time, it was one of the most selfless acts I've ever witnessed. My squad leader smothers me, and we stay like this, cringing and flexing and gnashing our teeth for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and nothing. The grenade was a dud. After we call in an airstrike for the shooter on the rooftop, we learned to never speak of this moment again. My squad leader's risky decision to have me throw a grenade up was negated by the sacrifice everyone saw him make. People considered putting him up for an award, but then we would just have to document the whole debacle in greater detail. Back at Saddam's palace, I kicked my feet up and realized that this whole time I was afraid of nothing more than a paperweight. Admittedly, it did feel good to be rid of it, to have this empty camo pouch that once housed such paranoia. That's when the supply guy comes around. Having heard about our exploits, he issues me a shiny new grenade. And yes, I have to sign for it. This time, though, I'm not quite so worried. I'd thrown 2. If the first grenade was too hard and hot, and the second one too soft and cold, I figured if I had to pop this new grenade, it would have turned out just right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Another virtual round of applause for him. And next up, we've got Billy Jenkins. Billy Jenkins is a fiction and essay writer based in Pittsburgh, a sergeant major in the United States Marine Corps Reserve with over 28 years of both active and reserve service. Jenkins deployed to Iraq in 2003 and again in 2006. His essay, Going Home, won the Essay Award and is published in Proud to Be Writing by American Warriors, Volume 6. His work can also be seen in Taste magazine, and his story, Banana Milk and Mystery Meat, was recently featured in Bricolage's Wordplay. Jenkins is a City of Pittsburgh firefighter with over 17 years of service. He earned his MFA in creative writing from Chatham University in 2015. So have a big virtual welcome for Billy Jenkins.
Dr. Brubaker, Lisa, my fellow contributors, thank you so much. This story is an excerpt from an essay entitled The Night Before. I sit on a sand-dusted cot cleaning my rifle in a crowded tent surrounded by 90 or so other Marines in the Kuwaiti desert. It's just before evening chow. Rumor has it we push north tomorrow, invade the country we've come here to wage war against. I am scared, period, point blank. I feel as though the amount of time between me holding a remote control in the armchair of my living room while watching CNN to sitting on this cot in this tent feels like no time at all. As far back as I could remember, I wanted to be a Marine. My father was a Marine and he served back in the 50s. When I was a kid, he'd wake me up and carry me downstairs so we could watch old war movies together. We'd make machine guns out of our fingers and shoot each other from behind couches. He'd throw balled up paper grenades at my mom and sisters. He sang marching cadences in the car and told story after story about his time in the Corps. I grew up whistling the theme from the bridge on the River Kwai and watching Jim Brown make his last-minute, always faithful run to freedom in the Dirty Dozen. I was a kid then. I'm not a kid anymore. While I sit on this cot while the Marines in this tent busy themselves, I think about how I got here. Questions. I was sick with questions about my abilities. Maybe all soldiers headed into war are. Back in Pittsburgh, it was the faces of the parents looking down on me with quiet panic in their eyes at the thought of never seeing their son or daughter again. And I think of them now. Their looks of half reassurance of my qualifications as their child's boss as we boarded our buses is a vice grip of pressure I haven't stopped feeling in my gut. While I wipe and re-wipe the same spot on my rifle, I sit here and keep replaying the last few weeks in my mind. I try to organize everything we have done so far, like I'm packing my gear. There's a reassurance in the packing and repacking of gear, that sense of completion that checking things off a list brings. I repack my thoughts carefully. During this time at Camp Bougainville, my unit and every other unit on base is trying to cram each minute of daylight with classes chock filled with information we're supposed to never forget. Classes on proper desert hygiene and water consumption, periods of instruction on field expedient trauma dressings, and how to call in a medevac chopper. The frayed green notebook I carry with me always looks like a generation's old family cookbook with rabbit-eared pages and circled entries. Each night I return to the page entitled Key Arabic Phrases, which is pretty much useless because I can barely make out the haphazard way which I scribble down stop and put down that rocket launcher. The worst part of the day by far is noon, when the sun positions itself directly overhead and seems to reach down and grab me by the shoulders. At noon, being inside this tent is as close to unbearable as one might imagine. The relentless heat forces us to eat our prepackaged meals on a hillside that runs the length of the camp. We regularly convene behind our tent for this midday chow. The other day, we felt the whisper of moisture being carried on the slightest of breezes. And for once, chow was tolerable, until I looked up and saw the shit removal truck hosing down a pair of porta-johns upwind from us. The truck became known as Pooh Bear. Pooh Bear and the Arabian Christopher Robin who manned the behemoth truck began to represent the dichotomy of our situation, the ever-shifting balance I faced between keep going and I fucking quit. The Pooh Bear driver, clad in black, knee-high rubber work boots, presumably swimming in feet sweat, a raggedy torn kerchief wrapped around his nose and mouth, barely shielding his senses from the wretched and foul aroma wafting up to him. His fuck it, I quit meter pegging out in the red. Enter his relief, the knowledge that he will stay here, stay safe once the war begins, while every other Marine in this camp would be heading north to futures unknown. Suddenly, the Pooh Bear driver's job seems kind of enviable. The idea that things could always be worse began to take root in my brain housing group. I remind myself to be thankful for what I have here now, because noon chow Pooh Bear missed in Kuwait is still in Kuwait. Somewhere between night and day, between navigating Pooh Bear visits, between classes on nerve agents and medevac procedures, somewhere before dawn, this place is calm. No matter the time of day, the fear remains, theirs and mine. The worry I carry from my Marines continues to gnaw at me. I need to let them learn these classes on their own, learn to take care of themselves. I can't micromanage them. However, the time it takes to show them how to load a machine gun, dress a pretend wound, fix a broken radio is time I don't have. My only defense against this fear is my poker face, reflecting a look somewhere between stoicism and rage. Whenever their questions start in, I must mask my complete and utter ignorance for our fates with my always ready poker face. So when are we leaving, Sergeant? What do you think it'll be like? How long do you think we'll be there? Sergeant J, will you always be with us? Enter my poker face. I'll slowly light a cigarette and tell them to calm down and then just redirect them to some other task. It is impossible for me to let them know I have no idea, that I am just as scared as they are, and that once we cross the border, we all may die. These thoughts swirl in my head while I sit on this cot and clean my rifle. I return from evening chow. The light from a dozen red lens flashlights crisscross the hooch. The entire camp is in blackout, probably the entire country. And my tent, like so many others, is crowded around a tiny radio with the promise of a presidential address. I lay in my cot because I don't need to hear what I know is coming at first light, the invasion. Before dawn, my platoon loads up our vehicles and we drive in silence, the 30 or so miles it is to the border. Hundreds and hundreds of vehicles as far as the eye can see sit idling. The smell of diesel fuel permeates everything. I drive the Humvee and simultaneously I watch myself drive the Humvee. My mind floats above me, trying to reconcile what my eyes take in. I am suddenly the Pooh Bear driver. I feel lucky that I'm sitting in this vehicle alive and not one of the dead we passed. I already miss Pooh Bear Mist. We have crossed the border and we are still alive. I flex the muscles in my feet and in my ankles. I flex the muscles of my thighs and of my calves. I wiggle my toes. I do this for fear that it will be the last chance I get to do so. Along with the gear I am issued, I carry with me a measureless weight of expectation and fear, burdens I cannot shake. I carry a fear of landmines and sniper fire, a fear of being blown up, taken prisoner, or being shot. I carry the fear that one of these things will happen to one of my Marines. Each fear cycles through my mind repeatedly on an endless loop. I drive on while the sun rises on my first day in country. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Billy. Next up, we have Elaine Little. Elaine Little is an Army veteran who deployed to Guantanamo, Bosnia, and Afghanistan. She has published short stories, essays, and articles in magazines and periodicals. She was a first place winner at the 2019 National Veterans Creative Arts Festival for her essay, Now It's You, and was a Baker Veteran Scholar at the Longleaf Writers Conference in 2018. Her TV pilot, The Relatives, was a finalist for a fellowship at the Stowe Story Lab in 2021. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Elaine Little.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the participants and the people on the panel. And I just want to say hi to my daughter, Lois, who's watching from Chicago. Hello, Lois. This is a short story, an excerpt from a short story, Emergency Leave, and it's from a collection of linked short stories. Okay. She wasn't sure how to schedule an abortion, so she Googled it. Fortunately, her state was blue. The clinic had a nice, reassuring name, and it wasn't too far from her home in Chicago. She was a lucky girl, she guessed. The transportation, though, what about that? She was taking a Greyhound back, but as far as getting to the clinic, she wasn't sure. Usually, one of her sisters needed the car for something. As she boarded the bus, she grasped a sweat-soaked copy of all the pertinent details on a piece of paper. When she finally sat down, she stashed her backpack and piled her stuff on the aisle seat. She didn't want anyone sitting next to her. This was the type of gossip that would eventually get out. Besides herself, two people knew already, Staff Sergeant Metzger and the First Sergeant. So that was that. One of them would spill the beans, probably for an ostensibly good reason. It was appealing gossip because it was girl-oriented, meaning this was not something that they would have had to deal with back in the good old days before women invaded the force with their embarrassing needs. Here went a considerable chunk of money she hadn't budgeted for. I mean, who would have thought? Her mom always said you needed to have discretionary cash on hand for unexpected emergencies. This fit the bill, and of course, she hadn't put away a cent. She still wasn't used to having money. Every payday felt a bit like Christmas. She was a reservist set to be deployed to Iraq within the month, but her unit was still in the pre-mobilization phase, meaning they spent their days in a holding pattern. There were vaccinations, doctor's appointments, endless classes, days at the range where they took their time, doing the task correctly, operating under the most optimal set of circumstances. The targets just sat there waiting to be engaged. The civilians in the mock-up of an Iraqi town conveniently spoke English. The rules of engagement were something they memorized or read off helpful index cards. So everything was a bit abstract. Iraq and the war seemed a world away, a world she only observed through news broadcasts, which made it seem gritty, glamorous, and exciting. The news correspondents embedded with their expensive utility vests and windblown hair, taking risks for sure, but looking great while doing it, and with a lot more autonomy than she would get. The bus took its time, stopping in every tiny burg between Fort Brennan and Chicago, and always in a sketchy neighborhood. Carrie slumped, her breath painting a round mist of fog on the window. The air conditioning was mercifully set on high, and she wished she had a sweater. Her mind wandered. Had she packed everything she needed in her duffel bag? She'd laid it out with the others in front of the barracks. It would be gone by the time she returned, packed up on the pallets. Anything else she wanted to bring would have to fit in her rucksack. What were people saying about her? She dried out her cover version on the women she roomed with in the barracks. They probably wondered why she was so chatty all of a sudden, like the guilty suspect going into way too much detail to the police about what they were doing the night of the crime. She had worried about what to disclose that sounded legit and worrisome, but not so alarming that they would doubt her ability to deploy. It was way out of whack for her to be going home on the weekend so soon before they were shipping out. She had told them that she had a cyst, a female problem, and that her family doctor, who was the only one she could possibly trust with this procedure, of course, had generously offered to take care of it on a Saturday. It was a ridiculous story, especially the part about having a family doctor. But everyone was polite, or maybe just not interested. Carrie didn't want to tell her mother or sisters the specifics, but she wanted them to be near just in case. What if something went wrong? And what exactly did she mean by wrong? Hospital level wrong? Or just I need to lie down for a couple of days wrong? She couldn't afford to look like she was incapacitated. Carrie liked kids in the abstract, but to her sisters, it seemed kids were the goal. They conferred grace upon their owners, a blessing from God, they insisted, and then slapped their kids in the next breath. She wasn't necessarily referring to cruel slaps. These were the slaps meted out when they ran ahead of their mom into the street or put their hand out to see what was in the pot boiling on the stove. What was it with kids anyway? She'd actually seen both her niece and nephew almost follow through on such death wishes, as if they could not comprehend that when you unbalance something, shit rains down on you, and also, in some cases, boiling water. They didn't talk about it much, but her entire family was Catholic. Well, maybe except for Lydia, who had recently joined a Protestant evangelical congregation, which made the Catholics seem tame. Carrie remembered when her family still went to church as a family. Several times the congregants organized a group to meet after Mass to pick at the abortion clinic. Carrie had tagged along a couple of times when she was much younger. Her mom had bribed her, promising her they'd go out to Applebee's afterward, and she usually kept her promises. They only stood by, a solemn reproach to the women's terrible deeds, or as a prayerful reminder to the ones who were being led astray. It depended on whom you were talking to. Carrie even liked some of the people who said these things. They helped her and were kind and encouraging about other issues, like do well in school and we're praying for you, and not like praying for you in a threatening gotcha way. Such lovely people that when they said something weird or offensive in the middle of a conversation, you wanted to unhear it. Girls referred to as whores or sluts, God as an all-knowing and frankly vindictive. His unconditional love, only something he bestowed upon children under the age of reason. Everyone else had to earn it, and it was easy to lose it.
Thank you so much, Elaine.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Elaine. Next, we have Rob Silverman. Rob Silverman's writing appeared most recently in the Michigan Quarterly Review and Oh Dark 30. He was a finalist for prizes at the Iowa Review and Boulevard. He served on active duty with the U.S. Army from 1969 to 1972. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Rob Silverman.
Did I unmute? I hope. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Been having some technical difficulties. This is an excerpt from an essay titled Incident at Range 27. An addiction to Ancestry.com led me online to North Carolina, to Cumberland County. I did not find my missing relative. I saw Bobby's death certificate instead. Bobby was not a relative. I just knew him. I watched him die in Cumberland County 50 years earlier. The death certificate called it an accident. You decide. Bobby arrived dead at Womack Army Hospital, Fort Bragg, from a gunshot wound in the chest. The Army doctor who performed the autopsy wrote on the death certificate, white male, 22 years old, unmarried. Under the cause of death, the doctor wrote, accidental discharge of M14 rifle. The doctor did not report how the accidental discharge happened, but I remember. Bobby died in August 1969. 500 Americans perished in Vietnam that month. The Army barely noticed one training death in North Carolina. Months earlier, Bobby might have imagined dying in a firefight or a mortar attack. Then he got a spot in the Massachusetts National Guard. He was not going to Vietnam. Bobby had only to finish training, spend 6 years at weekend drills and summer camps. That day, we marched to Range 27, fell out on the double, took seats on bleachers. We faced pairs of trails separated by brush-covered berms running up a gentle hill. Walk to the top of the slope, one row at a time, a sergeant said. As targets pop from the ground in the brush, drop to the prone position and shoot them. Walk at the same pace. Don't get in front of the firing line. Set the safety on your rifle before standing up. M14 assault rifles were heavy, clumsy. The safety was on the front of the trigger guard. If you did not look, you might squeeze the trigger instead of the safety. Row one moved out, shooting at targets as they appeared. Each row behind followed. Cracks of scattered gunfire and the sour smell of spent ammunition filled the air. Range sergeants carried safety paddles, the tops of large food storage cans stapled to flat wooden sticks, painted white and red. If the sergeants held up the white side, it meant to move and fire. If they showed the red side, that meant stop moving and cease firing. Near the firing line center, I sat on the fourth row. The soldier on the right trail in front of me fell behind his row. Bobby was to his left. A range sergeant supervising that pair of tracks smacked the back of the slow soldier's helmet with his safety paddle and yelled at him to move faster. The sergeant poked the slow soldier in the back with his safety paddle and ignored Bobby. Bobby moved ahead, dropped to the prone position. Bobby remained motionless on the ground as his row got up to start forward. The red clay turned dark under Bobby, turned dark from the blood spewing from his chest. I did not distinguish the shot that hit him. I doubt that Bobby heard it. They say you never do. The senior range sergeant ran along the bleachers, waving the red side of his safety paddle in every direction. Cease fire, he yelled. The trainee to Bobby's right stood, froze. The range sergeant who paddled him took the trainee's M14 and shoved him until he fell. Then he kicked him. Other sergeants grabbed the range sergeant, held him back. The sergeant walked over to us in the bleachers, his shoulders slumping. That moron, he said, pointing to the bewildered soldier on the right trail, squeezed the trigger instead of the safety. The round went just above the ground, hit the other guy in the chest. 1,000,000 to 1 shot. I looked at the ground between the trails dotted with little mounds of rocky dirt. Any might have diverted the bullet. None did. Bobby's friends cried. I did not weep, nor was I holding back tears. 9 years earlier, my father died from cancer at 42. I was 12 and cried for days. Then I stopped crying for the dead. 3 Huey helicopters landed in quick succession. Bobby left in the first one. Helicopter number 2 took away the soldier who shot him. Helicopter number 3 delivered a lieutenant colonel. He faced us, standing tall, shoulders back, hands clasped in the small of his back, feet apart. He explained what had just happened. This was an accident, men, he said. Military police officers are on their way and might ask you what you saw. You saw an accident. The military police never asked. Sergeants covered the spot where Bobby died with fresh red clay and ran the rest of us through range 27. Next to that spot, I dropped to the prone position, fired, hit the pop-up target. It fell backward, then sprung forward. I turned my head toward the fresh red clay for half a minute, a moment of silence for Bobby. The sergeant told me to keep moving. I set the safety on my M14, stood, walked up the slope.
Thanks so much, Rob. Another virtual round of applause for Rob, everybody, please. Next, we have J.B. Stevens. J.B. Stevens lives in the southeastern United States with his wife and daughter. He was nominated for the Pushcart Prize for Poetry, was a finalist for the Claymore Award, and won Mystery Tribune's inaugural microfiction contest. Let's have a big virtual welcome for J.B. Stevens.
Everybody, I'm reading a piece called "A Wartime Breakfast for Ramirez," with Ramirez, and it's an excerpt from a longer piece. An explosion jarred me, and I opened my eyes and I knew exactly where I was, and there was no confusion. In the beginning of my wartime, when someone tried to kill me or blow me up, it was disconcerting. After a while, it became a part of my life, and I almost forgot it's not normal to be blown up. But I'd stopped caring. My feelings had stopped working. I didn't like that my feelings had left, and I tried to fix it, but nothing had worked yet. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my M4, put on my dollar store flip-flops, and ran to the gray concrete bunker. Ramirez was already there. He had a deck of cards. Well, everything blew up. We played 5-draw poker, no betting. It's less fun without gambling, but much cheaper. I usually lose, so this was my best case scenario. I pulled out my can of Skull and had a dip. Ramirez gave me shit about dipping wintergreen. I told him to stop, but he kept it up. The minty smell mixed with the gray dust air. The airborne grit got in my nose and in the back of my throat, and it made my eyes water. The enemy fire kept oozing in. Soon, I heard our artillery's outgoing shots. After 30 minutes of back and forth indirect death tag, it was over as if it never started and never happened. When it was all done, Ramirez grinned at me. Breakfast? Yeah, I said. Let me get dressed. We went to my housing unit. Ramirez held my rifle and waited outside. I put on my uniform. My boots were fitting tighter than normal. I exited and we went to the chow hall. The building had hit by incoming fire. There was a hole in the north corner of the roof and the north wall was gone. I was glad the hole was far from the hot chow line. That way none of the dirt got my food. I grabbed a brown plastic tray and got in line. I got to the front and there was a Bangladeshi food service contractor. He gave me scrambled eggs, bacon, pork sausage, a bagel with cream cheese and pancakes. The food looked great and I was excited and thankful, and I felt bad because he might be Muslim. He was serving me pork. I got a cup of black coffee and a glass of orange juice. The food reminded me of Waffle House back home. I'd gone there often with my father and I loved the place. Sat down in a blue plastic chair that reminded me of the same grade school. Ramirez sat across from me. He just had bacon and eggs. I pointed at his plate. What's up? Ramirez slapped his huge, but not his noticeable, but not huge belly. Going keto. Yeah? Why? I got to look good when I get back home, he laughed. I got to keep the wife from cheating on me. I laughed. You know she's getting pounded by a fireman named Jody right now. Ramirez frowned and forced a chuckle. The two Air Force guys sitting next to us laughed out loud, and I felt guilty. I'm just playing, I said. I'm sure she can't wait for you to get home, and she isn't run around or anything. Ramirez winked. Of course, man, no worries. He looked down and ate his eggs. My guilt metastasized. I held up my coffee cup. I'm going to go get more. Can I get you something? No, I'm good, Ramirez said. Thanks. His voice seemed more alive, and that made me glad. I didn't like hurting my friends. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I walked to the shiny stainless steel coffee percolator. It looked perfect, and it always looked perfect, and I wondered if a Bangladeshi guy spent every night cleaning it. A guy moves across the world to work for the almighty American war machine and spends his day wiping fingerprints off a hunk of metal that is nothing but pour hot water over crushed beans. But then I became jealous, because that life seemed like a good and simple and honest existence. He maintains the thing that gives other people's happiness. It was simple and clean and righteous, and there was no moral gray. Every day, everything I did every day, none of it really made me happy. and I didn't know if my bullshit made anyone's life better. Maybe the coffee guy was way more important than whatever the hell I was. So my coffee cup was full, question being a ruse. I poured the liquid in the trash and I refilled my cup. The scent was strong and good. I love the smell. I took a sip. It's too hot, but it tasted great. The food and services were always top shelf at this fob, and I appreciated it. I walked to the line and found the Bangladeshi food service worker. I made eye contact with him, held up my cup, said thank you. The worker, who was short and dark haired, gray skin, he waved and smiled. He was missing a front tooth and his other teeth were green. His grin appeared genuine, and I wondered if he was the coffee percolator operator. I wanted to dig into the mystery, but Ramirez hooted, so I walked back to my table. Ramirez's eggs and bacon were gone, as was my bagel. Thought you were going keto, I asked. Ramirez shrugged. Every diet needs a cheat day. How long you been on the diet? Today's my first day, Ramirez said. Figured I'd get the cheating out of the way now. After that, it's all smooth sailing. Smart, I tapped my head. If you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough. I've heard. I'm not that tough, Ramirez said. That means you're smart? They're playing checkers and I'm playing chess, Ramirez said. I laughed. Ramirez pointed to his left. There's that lady from before come look for you. I turned. Bassinet Reeves stood in the corner of the wall hole. Light from the roof hole shot down on her like a laser through the dust. She sipped a cup, and I thought of the phantom coffee percolator operator. I stood and I walked over. She shook my hand and held up the coffee. You had any of this? I felt warm inside. Another percolator appreciator. Yeah. She turned and threw the cup in the trash. The coffee shit. My throat got tight. Sure. Wind rushed through the mortar hole, and I hoped she'd leave soon. What can I do for you? She gestured to an empty table. We walked over and sat. I want to let you know, Reese said. Our investigation into the sergeant's death is over. And, she sighed, it was an accident. He was raising those scorpions for fighting and got stung. Seriously? Yeah. We even brought in an arachnologist from the Smithsonian. What's an arachnologist? A person with a PhD in bugs, in this case, scorpions. You brought an insect professor to the war zone? The professor was from Germany. We sent her to the Air Force Base and she flew in. Yeah, that makes sense. The arachnologist did a bunch of tests out the corner. Gold was stung 100 times. Overwhelming his system, he died. Tear crept out of Reeves' eyes, and I wondered what their relationship was. It had nothing to do with the scorpions fighting, or gambling, or money, any of that, I asked. Reeves looked at me cross-eyed. You think this is a John Le Carre novel? No, I said. Why? There's not some grand design. It's just a fucking war. So, I asked. So, Reeves said. People die for stupid reasons and then it's done. She started crying and stood. It's just a fucking war. I looked at the lines cutting through the grime on her face. How well did you know Golds? I did, Reeves said. I did know him well. She left through the chow hall's door, even though the hole was right there. I thought about the tattoo face girl from the last mission outside the wire. I wonder if she was okay. And everything was a little bit better when I thought of her. I went back to the percolator and I got another cup and I returned to the table. Ramirez had eaten my pancakes and left, so my breakfast was over. I exited the building through the bomb hole, not the door, and I went back to my housing unit. I thought of Reeves' tears and I felt something. That's it.
Thanks so much, JB. Another virtual round of applause for JB. Next, we have Ryan Stovall, who is a former adventurer, world traveler, and Green Beret. His first poetry collection, Black Snowflakes Smothering a Torch, is forthcoming from Woodhall Press in fall of 2022. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Ryan Stovall.
Thanks, everybody. I just want to say everybody that's read so far has been wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to y'all. It's been great. I'm going to read a couple poems tonight. The first one is dedicated to Gary Gordon's family. Gary Gordon was one of the Delta guys that went in to try and help the Black Hawk pilots in Mogadishu back in the 90s. It's called Army Brat. Summer's last faint breath pushes up the hill, a gentle warmth that speaks of growth and love. There will be no other breeze like this until sometime late next year. The tall grass bends, embraces the breeze. The oak's leaves give up a gracious sighing. The girl's short yellow hair ruffles a little. Black clouds are gathering behind the breeze, stark, brutal winter staring out of each. The girl turns and with a solemn heart trudges down the meadow hill that faces out across the sea. And the second one is called The Firing Line. The town is, and it is Gao. It's in eastern central Mali, in the sub-Saharan desert over there. The Firing Line. Under the searing sun of Gao, between some scrubby brush and the last few stunted desert trees, at the edge of the sand, where the paved road and all life ends, a sweating line of coal-black suns prostrate themselves upon the ground, as if to pray. All squint against the searing sun of Gao, across a swath of sand, toward a jumbled mound of basalt, lying broken black and pink, at the base of a long cliff, jutting skyward like a church. This Mecca they all face is the rusting hulks of cars, not Humvees or APCs, but sedans and minivans, strewn haphazardly before the rocks, all baked by the searing sun of Gao. At an order, the hammers fall in unison. Their reports echo from the cliff to join the cacophony of whining ricochets and plinking tinny hits that roll sharp and menacing across the desert lying bare under the searing sun of Gao. Atop the cliff, the ghost of Mother France looks down on them from the bombed and burned out remnants of an old colonial villa, tears flowing down her peachy cheeks to wither and parch beneath the searing sun of Gao. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Next, we've got Loretta Tobin. Loretta Tobin grew up on a farm in North Dakota and graduated from Minnesota State University Moorhead with a BSED. She joined the Navy Reserve and was the Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 18 Seabees admin chief when they mobilized to Al-Assad, Iraq in 2006. After Iraq, she retired from the Naval Reserve, and in 2019, she retired from the city of Everett, Washington. She has had poems published by As You Were, The Military Review, Line of Advance, The Deadly Writers Patrol, New Plains Review, and Proud to Be. Her poems are anthologized in Willow Down Books 2020 anthology, Poems from the Lockdown, Our Deepest Calling, A Decade of Writing in Community 2010 through 2020, and Solstice, Light and Dark of the Salish Sea. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Loretta Tobin.
Thank you. And it's such an honor to be included with a talented group of writers like you. And it's a dream come true. Today, I'm going to read a poem called I Hear Birds. I want to hear a pair of seagulls voice their klaxon warning wail, see them bow to each other, then strut and waggle and mew before they hop and run like planes on a runway, flap their wings, take to the air. When I hear gulls, I can inhale the tangy, briny, salt smell of the sea, watch the waves, soft lap, approach my feet, threaten to douse my toes with a chill, cold drink. All I hear are crows, big, black crows. They line up on wires strung between power poles and along the edges of buildings, soldiers ready for inspection. Here there's no mew, no wail, only a shove or two, a dress right dress and loud caw, caw, caws. Here, even the crows know formation drills. I scoop up a handful of sand, hold it near my face, sniff and hold my breath. Where is the sea or the salt? All I detect is the universe. Its gotcha laugh, like a murmuration of prayers in the desert heat. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Loretta. Next, we have Peter Trevellis. Peter Trevellis's work has appeared in Deadly Writers Patrol, Blood and Bourbon, Thema Literary Journal, The Sunlight Press, Dime Show Review, and various anthologies. In 2021, his fiction was performed as part of a Word Theater Worldwide presentation. He's worked as a television writer, editor, and is currently on staff at the David Lynch Foundation, where he provides free transcendental meditation instruction for veterans. He recently completed a first novel and is finishing up a collection of short stories. Peter is a graduate of the San Francisco Art Institute and is a longtime member of the UCLA Word Commando's Creative Writing Workshop for Veterans. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Peter Trevellis.
Okay, thank you. This is chapter 16 from a novel in which the main character, named Lucien, is returning home from his third deployment to Vietnam. It's called Bringing It All Home. There were stories. There were types of anxiety on board. You couldn't go ashore if your gonorrhea wasn't cured. After 6 months in the war zone, the aircraft carrier was making its way back from the South China Sea to Virginia's Chesapeake Bay, cruising at 30 knots, 24/7. We crossed the equator twice, heading south, then north. It looks exotic on paper, but it was all water. It'd be a long month of nothing but water. Riding low, like a car with a trunk full of contraband, the scuttlebutt was, and I think this is true, it was the souvenirs everyone had bought. The low prices for electronics in Asia were irresistible. Pentax cameras, Nikon lenses, Sanyo boomboxes, Sony reel-to-reel tape decks, enormous Pioneer speakers. Months of shopping, 3,000 sailors, made for a significant load. Families anticipated our arrival. We'd be standing in neat formation, lining the edge of the flight deck in our dress blues, at parade rest, legs slightly apart, hands locked behind our back as the ship neared the pier. You'd never know from seeing us from afar how badly we'd all wanted to cross that plank to shore, how we could barely stand upright. Hundreds of girlfriends, wives, and kids would be on shore, waving flags and holding up welcome signs like "Make love, not war" on huge banners. Nailed it. It was on everyone's mind, definitely on mine. Many of the men journeying home were healing from the clap. Syringes emptied into butt cheeks, 4 inches of needle and antibiotic. Limping sailors with sore butts were a familiar sight for a week after any of our ports of call. It took 2 weeks for the medicine to work its magic. The voyage home allowed plenty of time for most cases. Most, but not all. The route to our home port in Virginia took us east from Vietnam across the Pacific Ocean and around the southern tip of Argentina. Cape Horn is the sea lane between South America and Antarctica, the meeting place of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, a nautical passage notorious for its dangerous combination of strong winds, huge waves, wild currents, and even icebergs, depending on the season. I'm glad I didn't know that beforehand. The first 2 weeks traversing the Pacific were idyllic. Most of the men done with wartime duties. Flight deck became a sandless beach littered with spent sailors sunbathing on blankets in between the A-1 and A-4 attack planes securely tied down. Recently purchased sound systems taken out of boxes and tested. Warriors reading, dancing, and day sleeping to make the best of the monotony. Recounting drunken nights, bragging about port romances, laughter. The recovery process, decompressing. I was propositioned more than once on that drive home. Haven't you ever heard of male love? Being my favorite. Even stumbled upon an intimacy in progress in a storage room. I'd later call bullshit on the Village people when they denied their song in the Navy was about sex. Vacation conditions ever so gradually morphed. Ship rolling and lurching with building intensity as we approached the Cape. It was enough to make a man turn green, which I did. Cold, overcast air materialized. Sailors in color-coded shirts rolled 50 jets off the flight deck, one at a time, onto elevators and crammed them securely into the hangar bay like puzzle pieces, one deck below. The flight deck was 55 feet above the waterline, which meant the waves crashing over the bow onto the now barren deck were 70, 80, 90 feet high. For one risky moment, I ventured to the middle of the flight deck, a lone figure in the fierce wind, up in the face of mortality, surfing on the world's largest surfboard, longer than 2 football fields, legs planted, arms out, keeping balance, defiantly in full view of the ship's captain on the bridge. It was a break in the tedium, a foolhardy move birthed by deep, depressive boredom. As we sailed on, the carrier was thrashed like a 40-foot sailboat in a mean squall. For 24 hours, the hull slapped the waves, twisted and moaned like it might break apart and be swallowed by a roiling monster. Fear, seasickness, rampant. With freedom only a week away, the ironic possibility that we could become yet another Cape Horn shipwreck intruded into the happy anticipation. It passed. Time for the final P tests. For some, a far more precarious storm. The hundreds of men who'd reported to sickbay for penicillin shots 3 weeks before were once again standing in hour-long lines, this time to find out if they were clear. Word went round that there was once a guy who wasn't 100% sure all his symptoms had disappeared. His wife and kids would be waiting on the dock to welcome him home, so he asked his healthy friend to pee in the cup for him, just to be safe. He needed this insurance policy. His friend's pee tested positive. He gambled and lost. How he explained that to his family is a mystery. Reckless infidelities coming home to roost. We entered the final stretch, ghost ship heading up the east coast of both Americas. Lingering were memories of pilots who hadn't returned from their missions, men who'd jumped overboard, and tons of bombs deployed from jet wings. The anticipation of freedom and happiness returned, neither of which would ultimately match the impending reality lying in wait. But only those of us who'd walked that plank before were aware of that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Peter. Next, we have Ben Weekly. Ben Weekly spent 14 years in the United States Army, including deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan and a tour in the Pentagon. His poetry won first place in the 2019 Heroes Voices National Veterans Poetry Contest. His poetry appears or is forthcoming in Ekphrastic Review, Vita Brevis, The Wrath-Bearing Tree, the anthology Our Best War Stories by Middle West Press, and the anthology We Were Not Alone by Community Building Artworks. He lives and writes in the Tri-Cities of Northeast Tennessee. Let's have a big virtual welcome for Ben Weekly.
Thank you. I'm very proud to have a piece in Proud to Be Volume 10 and honored to be able to read with all you wonderful people today. I'm going to read a poem, Heat and Pressure. This is for Freeman Gardner. Heat and pressure. 1. Awake to the slanted light on a March afternoon in Baghdad, I rise from sweat dried into crust, salt stained in the shape of a body on a poncho liner. A man died today. knelt down beside a garbage pile to wipe his forehead, to rest the weight of armor and ammunition on his bones before the fire clap and dust cloud. An echoed thump felt not heard inside a steel tomb. The urgent voices, radio squawk and chatter. Send Doc quick, he's fucked up bad. Punctured tire, spalled armor. Patriot X-ray, Patriot X-ray. This is Sapper 5, medevac request follows, litter, urgent, surgical. 2. Sergeant P says you cannot place blame when someone is killed because war is about killing. Sergeant O says it's best not to imagine trading places. Sergeant J says he didn't hurt. He didn't feel anything, just heat and pressure. And like that, everything went black. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. Next, we have Ben White. As Ben White was serving his 22-year military career in the U.S. Army and the U.S. Coast Guard, and again while he was earning his MFA from the University of Tampa, he thought he was a poet, but he is not a poet at all. Ben is a witness. What he writes is testimony. Let's have a big digital welcome for Ben White.
Thank you, James. This is, I was included in PDP 6 when there was a poet named Andrew Gudgel. And he had a line that said, scratch an old soldier and you're bound to find a storyteller. And the story I'm about to read in a poem form has gone through many versions, so I appreciate the appreciation it had to get back in Proud to Be Volume 10. It's about an anniversary of an event that is going to be celebrated its 38th year on Wednesday, so I better read it fast. Memorial thoughts. 37 years. Another anniversary of a bad day at the 1st and 51st Infantry when the M60 machine gun was accidentally discharged and fired a round out of the barracks room and through the arm of a soldier and into the collarbone of another, where it was deflected down to tumble around his chest cavity, taking out his heart and lungs just like it was designed to do before lodging in a rib. The medics swarmed in on the Thursday morning, 26 January, and kept his brain alive. But when the German doctors at the Krankenhaus cracked him open, they showed them the mush of organs they'd been trying to save.
Thanks so much, Ben. We've got one reader left. Before I introduce her, I just wanted to remind you all that submissions are currently open for Proud to Be Volume 11. And this is even though we've got a few months before the deadline, this is the time of year when we start sifting through those as they come in. So we're looking forward to reading more of your words. So without further ado, our last reader of the day is Charity Winters. Charity Winters is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and Austin, PA's graduate English literature program. Her work has appeared in various publications, including Proud to Be, Writing by American Warriors, The Red Mud Review, Scintilla, The Report, The Free State Review, The Lutheran Digest, Leatherneck, Proceedings, O Dark 30, and The Round Table. Join me in giving a big virtual welcome to Charity Winters.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is good to see everybody again this year. I'd like to thank the Missouri Humanities Council and their continuing support of the arts.
We really couldn't do this without you. So thank you very much. And I hope that we will soon again be able to be meeting in St. Louis at some point and get to share all of this in person. So today I was going to read one poem from the anthology of Proud to Be, and then another one that I think kind of speaks to everyone's contributions today. So first, I would like to read a poem from Proud to Be, page 135, Pre-Deployment Training. The military always war games for contingencies found in plan books of fantasy, equipped with material left over from wars before. The purpose is preparedness, to know the mission, tactics, and gear, but pre-deployment locations and deployment destinations rarely have anything in common other than the military way of hurry up and wait. They say the principles of land navigation are the same, whether in the Rhineland or Kuwait. Still, I'm not sure how the forests of Western Germany prepared us for the Iraq insurgency, or which war we were preparing for in Korea as the boogeyman north of the DMZ got testy with his long-range weaponry. The best training was in Texas. The landscape was like Iraq. In both places, the summer heat blistered lips and heads. Then there was the outhouse at the live fire range with a dead animal floating inside the sludge of human excrement that medics swore did not cause all the open sores reported during sick call. But still they cordoned off the shack of shit. Combat first aid training got real when one of us face planted in an anthill. And not to be confused with where we would deploy. There were people on the run, border hopping, oil, snakes, bugs, and in Texas, everybody had a gun. So, thank you. I think creative things should always have some element. I think humor is important. Creativity is something of hope. You're making something outside of yourself and contributing with other people. And it should always have that when you make something new, just like making life, if you write, you create, and you're creating something that has its own life. And that's something that we're all participating in. And that's something that should bring us all kind of hope, because it's the printed written word, and it's worth our time, it's worth our effort, and it's kind of been under attack for a long time, right? And so I wanted to encourage everybody by sharing a poem called The Music Lives On, After Lines by Keats and Shelley. And I think that you will all feel like you've been a part of this experience together. So, and the music lives on, After Lines by Keats and Shelley. Poets hail the nightingale as the unseen musician in the dark, whose resounding melody breaks apart dull oblivion and dead dreams with full-throated ease. But the remarkable thing about this dryad of trees is that if left alone, it chokes. Without hearing another nightingale, the bird won't sing a note. So it is not just the singer, but the song that rises to meet the dawn and breathes into this mortal solitude, inspiration and life anew. Thank you all for letting me be a part of it this year, and I really do hope that we will soon meet in St. Louis.
Charity, and I agree. I hope we will be doing this reading maybe in 2023 in person. That would be amazing. Thank you, James, for all the great introductions, and to our 15 readers who had the courage today to share their stories. This is my 7th PTB reading, and it's always such an honor to be a part of this event. So thank you for another phenomenal reading, everyone. A special thanks to all of you who attended in support of our veteran writers, including our executive director, Ashley Beard-Fosno. Thank you for watching. Our copy editor and founder, one of our founders of PTB, Susan Swartwout, and a former board member, Kathleen Nigro, even tuned in today. So thank you. Don't forget to purchase your copy of PTB 10 and click the link to the short survey that will show in the browser when the webinar ends. If you would like to learn more about our organization, our upcoming 2022 signature program series called Eat, Think, Be Merry, Missouri's Foodways and Edible History, and our membership, please visit mohumanities.org. Sincerely though, thanks everyone, wherever you're tuning in, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.